Hello, world, and welcome back to We the People, an American pod show. We have Diane Peralta here with us, and we were talking about a very interesting word that they use in, or that they have in the Filipino language. Can you pronounce the word one more time for me?
Bayanihan.
Bayanihan.
Yes.
Okay.
Bayanihan has two meanings. It's either if you use the root word bayan, that means nation, or if you use the root word bayani, means hero. And han is a suffix that says being. So it's either you're saying being a nation or being a hero.
Right. And we were kind of touching base and talking even off camera here about like the difference is, and I was trying to like fully understand because it's to me it kind of sounds like it's more part of the DNA when it comes to the culture of the Filipino people, that it's really rooted deeper than just kind of like how in America we might have like mentors, right, where it's like, say, like for instance, you're in the nursing industry, you might have somebody who mentors you in regards to that specific trade, and then they just become your friend over time. Whereas this sounds like it's more part of the culture itself, going back through I would say like through the grandparents, through
Centuries.
yeah, through the history of the culture. It's interesting to think. I mean, it's really cool. I think that's what I was saying, right? It's really cool.
Yeah.
So you've had a lot of things that you've overcame, with coming to America and wanting to be a nurse, and then California denying you after, but even before that, becoming, studying to be a nurse and going through college in the Philippines and experiencing that. And there's something I'm aware of that you've did something interesting, right? You
Okay.
and is it a friend of yours?
Yes.
Have established in regards to education from the Philippines. I
Yes.
want to make sure we touch on that. Explain a little bit what I'm talking about here.
My friend Brian and I and two other girls from high school established a scholarship program in the Philippines. And it started because I helped Brian go to college. Actually, even my other friends helped him too. He wasn't going to go to college because they just couldn't afford it. He's the youngest of 5 kids, and he's the very first one in there. It's like a first generation of an educated person in the 21st century. It was like a really big achievement for his family.
Right.
And with me helping him out with that while I was also in college was such an achievement. It was an achievement of like graduating your own degree, but then helping another person at the same time,
Right.
hiding it from my parents.
Right. That's what you're saying. Like
Yeah.
they were kind of against. Or
Not
they
exactly against. When we found out that Brian wasn't going to go to college, I asked help from my parents. But when we started college in 2008, it kind of like got messed up because the U.S. had a recession. My dad was our only, like he was like our breadwinner,
Right.
and his job was, not sure. You weren't sure
Yeah.
at that time. And so despite them saying no at first, I mean yes at first, they had to say no.
Right.
Because my college plan in the Philippines was also affected and declared for bankruptcy. We did not get any out of that college plan because it was just gone.
So I want to insert something there, especially since the idea of the platform is for us to be able to share our stories. It's definitely worth noting that the recession that was going to happen in the United States was going to affect other places around the world, and I would say that it's fair to think that if there's a recession somewhere else around the world, that it is going to affect us as well in one way, in some shape or another. That as a people that live on a planet, you know, we don't have another planet that we live on. We only have this planet, and I don't think that that was a choice for all of us. I don't think we were like, before we were born, I'm going to live on Earth, you know. And so I think it's really worth mentioning, you know, that it is one people, you know, when it comes to the world. So anyhow, I just thought that was interesting because you were able to tell a story that clearly it affected you guys, the recession that we were going through here as a family, you know, and even as a community, right? So, okay, so he was struggling, right, to pay for his education or even thinking about doing it, right?
Even in high school, he was already having a hard time. He didn't tell us that he was working on the weekends, and sometimes he comes home earlier so that he could do something. Like, I know he cooks food with his mom's help. He helps his mom cook food, and then they would go around the village and try and sell that. So he was always, we know that he studies hard.
Right.
And then we know that he doesn't go anywhere because every time we ask him, like, hey, let's go out for swimming, and he doesn't go.
Right.
But he didn't say anything. He just, no, I can't.
Can't make it.
Can't make it. And then why? Well, I just have to do something over the weekend. And he hid that from us for 3 years. He was in his last year of high school, and then we were in our second to the last. So he was a year older than us. We just found out about it then when he was about to graduate.
And so now, since then, he's now been able to go through college, right? Because you guys, everybody supported him and encouraged him. How did he end up paying for that schooling then on his own? Is that something that everybody came together as a community to help, or is that something that he was able to do on his own?
For college?
Yeah, for his college, his higher education.
For college, he had scholarships and I had scholarships.
Okay.
So we qualified for scholarships, and then the money, because it's more of our scholarship in the Philippines is more like, okay, if you get scholarship, you're just going to pay half of your tuition fee. And so I had to talk to my parents about, hey, I really worked hard for these grades. Can I have the other half? Because if I didn't study hard, it's going to go to the school anyway.
Right.
And so they agreed, and that was more of like, that was the fuel of most of our expenses.
Nice.
And I gave that to him. And I had a bad shopping habit way back then, and I had to cut that down.
No.
Yes. And then we had a lot of, he's really good in PowerPoints, and he did a lot of extra stuff on school. So he would do PowerPoints for some students that he knows. He'll get paid for it. He'll do extra work for teachers, like checking test papers, anything that could earn him money.
Right.
He also did. We even sold school supplies too. You know, like in school, people would ask you for like, oh, can I have like 1 paper or 2 papers because they forgot. We'll just have extra, like, well, I have a whole pad here. Do you want to buy it?
And so then you were hustling. You were
Yes,
making
we were.
moves, making moves, getting it done. You know, had an idea, let's get after it. Then, so now today you guys actually have like a whole, what is it? What do you call it? Nonprofit then? Scholarship?
A scholarship program.
A scholarship program.
We're in the process of registering it.
Okay.
We still have issues because we have to have 4 main people that are Filipinos.
Okay.
There are 4 of us, but I still am a U.S. citizen,
Right.
so I still have to work on my citizenship too.
Right. Okay. And the idea is to establish a scholarship program to help other individuals, right, that
Yes.
are wanting to go to higher education that might not have the resources or even think that that's an option, right? And you want to make them aware that we're here to help and support.
Yes.
That almost sounds like your word here, like for what was it? Is it to be a nation? What's the words? The word you were just saying. You have
Bayanihan?
Yes.
Yes.
What's the first part of it?
A bayan is being a nation.
Being a nation. So, or being a nation or being a hero. So it almost sounds like there's a little bit of that going on.
Yes.
Where you're like, we could do better as a culture, as a community, we can figure this one out,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so that way nobody's doesn't have this option if that's what they want.
Yeah.
Nicely done. Another thing, you know, so overcoming, coming to America, overcoming getting a degree, going through all these things, these are all great accomplishments. These are like phenomenal accomplishments. You know, it's not everybody becomes a nurse. That's a hard path. You know, what motivates you is that coming back to your culture, right? Coming back to supporting and being aware that your family has sacrificed for you, and so you want to make sure you're giving back as much as possible, right?
Yes, there's this question that we are always asked. I guess I think I remember it since I was in grade school. They would ask you, if once you start working, are you going to stay here in the Philippines or are you going to go abroad? And that is a very tricky question.
Yeah.
Because if you say you're going to be in the Philippines, you're going to have to think about, well, how much am I going to get paid here? Right? Like, practically speaking, it's not very advisable to stay there. Just considering if you were a nurse in the Philippines, you would earn $200 for a whole month, and that's not enough.
Right.
But then if you say, well, I'm going to go abroad, they're like, this person's selfish.
Oh no.
They're not going to give back to the community.
Yeah.
So that was a very challenging question for me all the time, because I knew that when I graduate, I'm leaving. Like, that's like 3 days after graduation, I was
Right.
gone. But this is the way for me to give back to the community. Because yeah, I might be, 6,000 miles away,
Right.
but I want my presence to be felt there, and I want to make change
Right.
from where I'm from.
Right. So it wasn't selfish.
It's not.
No, and I don't imagine that everybody feels that it's selfish, but I can understand how it appears that way, because there probably are some people that are just like, I'm all by myself. I'm done living this life. I'm gonna go find somewhere and do a better life, and it's really interesting because even when people do that, they still eventually, at some point, maybe they're old and now slowing down, then they all of a sudden realize it, and it's very honorable for you to be able to see that I'm not being selfish. I'm doing what's best for me right now, and as I grow and progress, I want to be able to give back.
Yeah, and I think it's a different way, like, of seeing things. It's a different perspective, because when I was there was this clinic, like a dialysis clinic that got established. And how was it established? Oh, from the Filipinos that are in the U.S. and
Right.
Canada. And there's this medical mission with German doctors. And like, how did it start? It was from a Filipino doctor that was in Germany and took his troop and went to the Philippines. So
Yeah.
just because you're out of the country doesn't mean you can't give back. So those were the things that I kept looking at, and not the negativity about being selfish.
Right.
And that really inspired me. And like, actually getting to know someone from California who did that dialysis clinic in my province, it was such an honor to meet them, because they said that was a dream and it came true, and I saw it in my province.
Right.
And it's been helping a lot of people. And a lot of these projects are usually nonprofit, they're free, they're all like services that people actually need, that the government can't provide. That's why they're doing it on their own.
Right. Yeah, there's so many lessons in that. Of one, I see, other people not being able to see your dream, see your vision, and all of a sudden assuming that it's not even possible. But you're like, I know it's possible. I have this feeling. I can do this. Like, I see something that you can't see. I'm sorry. I love you. It's not that I don't like you. I believe I can do this. And then you're going to do it. And you're going into uncharted territory. And you're making something happen in the face of that diversity. Then there's the other one of being able to look to people who have accomplish something and seeing the inspiration in that and keep showing up every day knowing that somebody else has been able to accomplish something that was great, that has helped your community, and you then chasing and pursuing that, man, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. No pressure.
I don't know, but I always do that. And it's
Yeah.
true that, yeah, you could say, yeah, I love you, but I really have to do this. Like, even the scholarship, I had a lot of barriers.
Right.
Because even my own family doesn't understand. It was like one of the hardest thing was like my own mom couldn't see what I'm doing. Well,
Right.
she sees it, but she's like, well, how are you helping other people and not your nephews and your nieces?
Correct.
And I'm like, Mom, I'm helping people that want to help themselves. I don't want to
Right.
spoil other people. So I'm looking for someone that really needs it and is really going to work for it and will be grateful
So-
for everything that we've given.
Right.
So I don't want to just help someone just cause.
Yeah.
And then eventually, I think maybe about 3 years in our scholarship, she's like, oh yeah, Diana helps. Like, she's the one that explains explaining everyone. Like, oh yeah, Diana's looking for someone that will
Yeah.
help themselves too. You know, like meet halfway.
So she sees it. Yeah. It's interesting as we elevate, right? As we elevate and become more educated and become more aware of something that we weren't aware of before, how we start to, I don't want to say like, I don't know if disconnect or separate. It's just you start thinking differently, and so you're not thinking the same as you used to think. And so people, they're like, what are you doing, you know? And you're like, I'm in a different spot now, you know, and so I'm observing the world differently, and so I'm approaching the situation completely different than I used to, because I've elevated in knowledge, or because it's not always just financial experience, right? And it's interesting. It's a very interesting evolution that happens. And
I think my stay here in the U.S. and the Philippines, just going back and forth, you see, you know, we're in Philippines is considered as a third world country, even if I don't want to say it out loud.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to hear it that way, but it is classified that way. And then you come to the U.S. and it's like, oh, first class, like it's, you know, it's America.
Right.
And then you see a big difference between the two nations, because here there's so many classes. Like, just an example, there's so many classes in the libraries. It's free. You could borrow books, you can borrow DVDs, you can borrow anything.
Right.
And in the Philippines, in my city, in my province, just around the city, there's like one library for 5 or 6 cities.
Yeah.
Can't borrow a thing. You can borrow it just for, you know, like maybe overnight.
Right.
And then it's not open all the time. So, you know, just that difference, like, whoa, you know, like, it's, wow, there's so many things that people take for granted here in the US.
Right.
If that was in the Philippines, that would have helped so many, like, other people.
Awesome.
And that's kind of, that's what I see all the time. And poor here is not really, like, poor in the Philippines is like really like scavenging for something to eat.
So I think when I say it's awesome, I think it's that you're observing that and seeing that. So I almost imagine that, like, maybe at some point as you progress, next thing you know, you're like setting up libraries and doing all that.
I
Like, I can
might.
see, I can already see. Is there a Diane Peralta library in the future? You know, like, because I think about that as we grow and progress. So it's just been an honor to have you on. I know we had some technical difficulties that went on there, and so there's like some cuts. We'll figure it out. Maybe even we might have to set up another interview to get you on, because I know there's other things that you've overcame. One of them
Yes.
being, you know, I'm just to touch on it briefly, was you went through cancer, right? Which was a huge situation. That was a huge thing to overcome. And I think it would be great to share that as well. Due to time, we're not going to be able to dive into it. But what I do want to do is I want to give you the floor to kind of imagine if you were talking to the world. What would be your words of wisdom to the world? And how could you encourage them? What would you say?
I would say it's very similar to, I think Gandhi said, I'm not exactly sure what he said, but it kind of like is the same way because somebody told me about it. I want people to lead the change that they want to see. If you want something to change so bad, you have to do something about it. You have to be willing to start. It's not going to be perfect, but you have to start it anyway because like the beginning, like starting something is the most difficult thing to do. If you try and perfect something because you want it to, be great, be awesome, it doesn't really work that way. And you have to do the first step and then make adjustments afterwards because there's so much, you can't perfect anything unless you start it. And even like perfection is not even something that you should work on. Work on improvements, not perfection. Because when you want to improve something, you're willing to grow, you're willing to get feedbacks, you're willing to ask people what is the best way, what is, like you're always seeking for something. Once you hit perfection, that's it, you don't grow anymore. So, words of inspiration, do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, it's been an honor. All right, folks, you heard it here on We the People with Diane Peralta. Thank you for tuning in. I am blessed to be part of this show today and hearing Diane's story, and I look forward to hearing more and watching as it grows. So thank you once again for tuning in to We the People, an American pod show. Go out there, be the change, keep rocking the free world. Later.